What is going on, guys? Today we're going to talk about a stock that I have posted about on the channel multiple times before, and it just keeps going lower. It has not seen any bright side. It has not gone up. And honestly, we're going to talk about my feelings still on the stock. Am I still in the position? Am I still buying more? Kind of what's going on with the stock? What's recently happened that's driven the stock even further down? And then what I kind of see happening in the future and going into the future. So if you enjoy the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. So today we are talking about SoFi Technologies, and you can see here today we were down 3% on the stock. Over the last 5 days, we're down 16.28%. In the last month, down 20%. Last 6 months, down almost 60%. And then if you look over kind of the last year, we kind of see some of what happened last year where the stock dropped down and then spiked up and then started dropping down more recently. So obviously over the last kind of few months since September, October, November, kind of last year, we saw the stock kind of just start falling off a cliff. And a lot of that, has to do with interest rate concerns, obviously the stuff going on with the Ukraine, and a number of other factors and everything. I mean, still the pandemic and stuff going on. So everything has kind of been falling and falling and falling. And small cap stocks like this have been hit the hardest. And SoFi being in the financial markets, obviously interest rates have a huge effect on the company overall. So we've seen it get particularly devastated. I mean, from a high of almost $23 in here down to, a low of $7 and basically 80 some cents is kind of what we're looking at. So overall, you've seen it almost drop by 3x. And obviously that's a really tough loss to take. So I still am actually holding my shares, and right now I don't even know where my cost basis is. I think it's around $13, but I'm kind of considering actually averaging down. I mean, this price that we're hitting at is very low. I mean, you're seeing, in the last 6 months, I kind of averaged down in here, and then again down in here, and overall, I'm sitting down here. I love this stock for selling puts because you see a lot of the volatility in the stock, and it being a relatively small cap, there's a lot of kind of interest in selling puts or buying calls or whatever on this stock. So you get a really good premium for selling puts. So if I do average down into this stock, which like I said, I'm fully planning on, I'll probably do it by selling puts underneath the current price and try and get in maybe around $7.50 or $7, somewhere around there. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for going in the future. But let's jump into kind of some of the reasons why we've seen, over the last month, this 20% drop, and even over the last 5 days, this 16% drop. So as I mentioned, SoFi, right, they give out loans for mortgages, cars, any sort of personal loan. But one of their big things is student loans. They're actually one of the leaders in the industry of student loans and basically providing student loans. And with that, obviously this last week or so, we've seen Biden actually extend out the student loan moratorium. So basically saying that, there's no need to pay back any of your student loan for, X amount of time, basically extended it out through the rest of this year. Personally, I don't think that was kind of the smartest move. I think it should be one of those things where, you start getting people, as we raise interest rates and as these other things are occurring, it makes sense to have student loans payments start coming due. And obviously with them extending that out, SoFi is hurt. What's very interesting though is listening and basically reading about the last earnings report. SoFi took this into consideration. So they fully kind of were transparent about this. They said they were fully expecting this moratorium to be extended through the end of the year. And this article by CNN even kind of touches on that. But it's very interesting. I mean, they kind of talk about some of the negatives in here about SoFi. They talk about how basically there's a lot of worry around that. But they have a quote in here from Noto, Anthony Noto. He's the CEO of SoFi. He actually worked at Twitter and at Goldman Sachs before. If you haven't looked into him, he's the perfect guy for a company like SoFi. But besides that, he basically has a quote and released a quote saying, SoFi remains incredibly well positioned to drive continued strong growth in revenue, members, and products, along with continued and improving profitability despite the fact that our student loan refinancing business has operated at less than 50% of pre-COVID levels for the last 2 years. So overall, right, he's saying that, student loans, ever since they've kind of put this moratorium in place where they aren't getting any payments back on their student loans, they've obviously suffered. They haven't been able to bring in that revenue. And even with that decrease in revenue that they're seeing there, they're still increasing all these other metrics. I mean, they're getting revenue growth from other facets of their business. They're getting member growth. They're getting product growth. People are basically, still using the platform and still very excited about it. So he's kind of, very positive and bullish on the stock there. But really what happened and what SoFi touched on their earnings is SoFi is cutting their 2022 guidance for sales and adjusted earnings to 1.47 billion and $100 million. So its previous forecasts were that 100 million is for profit. Its previous forecasts were for revenue of 1.57 billion and a profit of 180 million. So obviously profit took a huge hit there, and then earnings, 100 million basically there. So obviously that's not great. But it's also something that they brought up at their earnings report. What was that, back in March, I think it was. So overall, investors should really have this in their mind and should know that it's kind of it was a possibility that this would not that this would get extended and that there wouldn't be payments of these student loans. And again, with SoFi being such a big player in this market, it's obviously going to have a huge effect on them and their business. So here's another article. I always like to look at both sides of the story. So that last one was a little bit more bearish, but here is kind of, some of the bull case for SoFi. They talk about here in this first kind of highlighted section that the company offers private student loans to students, and with a total book value of 7.5 billion, which is one of the basically leaders in the personal loan markets. They're also expanding their mortgage and other things like that. So they have a lot of different businesses that they kind of rely on. They're all financial based, but if you even go on SoFi, their website, they have so many different products. They just started checkings and savings accounts. They offer their own credit cards, debit cards, things like that. I mean, they're basically just an online bank that has everything, and with that they have a larger customer base than being some sort of local type of company. And they also don't have the overhead costs that you'd get from like a Wells Fargo, where you have a bunch of branches with employees and everything like that. So they're a little bit more agile, a little bit more able to adjust and change to different landscapes and things that occur. So overall, some of this negativity that's kind of around this moratorium extension, the investor kind of says here, it's already priced into the stock. And I like that. I mean, obviously from the drop that we've seen today, right, a drop of 3%, it's still, investors are still trying to price this in. They're trying to figure out, what is this moratorium? The problem that I have with that is it goes back to something that I've done before, and I would kind of call on most recently when I was looking at Activision Blizzard. So Activision Blizzard, right, they had a bunch of negative news around the stock that was all short-term things. They were having issues with basically employee relationships and how that was affecting their public image. And overall, that negatively affected the stock in the short term. And then Microsoft came in and purchased the company at a low, and it drove the stock price way up. So while they haven't gone through completely with the purchase, but what I mean, they're still in that process and looking at things. So that's a very short-term thing. And even this moratorium, right? If you're thinking, we're talking about less than 8 months until the end of the year. So in a little over 8 months, you'll see this moratorium hopefully come off. I mean, I don't see any reason why they would keep extending it, unless obviously there's some sort of huge recession and things go, completely wrong, which we've got bigger problems at that point. But there's no real reason for them to keep extending it. So with that, you've got an 8-month thing, an 8-month issue that's, weighing on the business. But after 8 months, what happens? These people are going to be paying off their loans, and you see this huge increase in revenue that's going to hit SoFi. The question is, when do investors actually start pricing that in? Because that's what's really important. Right now, they're pricing in that SoFi is going to have a lot of problems with basically maintaining revenue numbers and maintaining these student loans as people aren't paying them back. But at what point do investors start looking at the stock and saying, okay, Well, that's been priced in. It's at a very low point. Okay, now it's time to actually start pricing in. Okay, these people are going to start paying these student loans off, and we're going to see a huge increase in revenue. So there's kind of a give and take there that you have to, consider of when does the stock market start pricing in that this stock is actually has a very bright future ahead of it, and it keeps, up with its growth numbers and everything like that. So overall, that's kind of my opinion on it. It's interesting, to always look at these price targets. So we have one here, kind of from this analyst. So they're saying that the average price target is 1650. This is a little bit higher than a price target I'm going to show you here in a second, but basically overall that accounts for, at a price of 854, that accounts for an upside of 93%. So almost 100, a double up basically return on this stock there. So that would be, huge. I personally think, in the long term, I think 1650 is actually low. I mean, we've seen, if looking at the chart, it go up to $22, $23. So I don't think that is out of the possibility, to even break beyond that, especially as the business grows. We haven't seen the business, priced in with its recent growth. We haven't seen the new checking and savings accounts priced into this stock, accurately, because we've been in a very negative market recently. So a lot of those things we have not seen priced in. So let's jump over and look at another price target real quick, and then we'll wrap things. So here we have Wall Street Journal, and they have kind of good price target information. As you can see, they have the graph of the chart and everything right there. So what we're looking at down here is there are actually analysts, there's 14 analysts on this. And 8 of them are saying that SoFi is a buy, while 6 of them are saying a hold. And what's kind of surprising to me is that no one's saying it's a sell. I mean, this stock is down 60%, and really no one has come off, a hold or a buy waiting to go down to sell, which is very, very interesting. A lot of the times when you see a stock drop this much, you'll see people basically just go bearish, just go completely bearish, and they'll pull all the ratings that say, yeah, you need to sell, you need to get out of this stock as soon as possible. But we haven't seen that, which in my mind tells me, right, that these analysts are looking at the stock and saying, we're going through a lot of short-term volatility, short-term negative, news, and overall, eventually, all the business metrics are actually headed in the right direction. We just have these external factors that are, negatively affecting the stock. So down here, we have actual, a different price target. So it's good to look across a few different sites because you're going to see different price targets. So this is obviously much lower than that other price target of 1650. Here we have an average of 1435. So what I'm going to do real quick is pull up a calculator here. So if the stock, if we're saying it's going to go to 1435 and we subtract 878 from it, we have 648, and if we divide by 787, we have basically a potential upside of 82%, which again, going back to my opinion, basically I think that is a low number. I think there's a lot more potential in this stock, especially over the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, 3 to 5 years, everything's different. I don't think this stock is even close to where it's at right now. I would not be surprised if it's, well over $25 at that point, but again, that's kind of my opinion on the stock. Obviously kind of take some of this, think about it in your own way. Think about, the banking sector, where you think it's going to be in the future. Make your own decisions. Personally, like I said, I am staying bullish on SoFi. Even the analysts, you can see they're staying bullish on SoFi. And overall, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years, I think this will be an easy stock, and I think they're going to get to profitability. I think there's a number of positive things that people are kind of ignoring right now in the market. So overall, going to try and average down, and potentially buy, significantly more shares than where I'm at right now. And hopefully in the future, my thesis plays out and we make a good profit on the stock. So overall, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you smash the like button. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day.